Overnight, Yamaha didn't just get cheaper. They made every competing outboard look overpriced. And if you bought the wrong engine in the last 18 months, this move may have just erased thousands of dollars from your resale value. Buyers didn't see it coming, dealers weren't warned, and competitors had no answer ready. Significant reductions appeared without warning, reshaping buyer expectations and forcing competitors to reassess their footing. Yet, the reasoning behind the move remained unstated. Was it driven by market pressure, internal changes, or a direction Yamaha hasn't fully revealed? On paper, it looked like generosity. In practice, it was something else. Dealers scrambled, competitors went silent. Because this wasn't just a discount. It was a move engineered years in advance, backed by technology few outside Japan had seen. And that's where the real story begins. Yamaha rewrites the price sheet. In early 2025, Yamaha issued a pricing update that immediately shifted the structure of the outboard market. The company reduced retail prices across major four-stroke models by 15 to 25%. And the announcement made clear that these were permanent adjustments, rather than incentives or temporary promotions. The F425 XTO moved from roughly $78,000 to about $65,000. The F300 dropped from the low $30,000 range into the mid-20s. The F150, long considered a premium mid-range option, fell just below $15,000. These changes applied not only to future orders, but also to engines invoiced weeks earlier, which led to disputes between buyers and dealers over whether adjustments or credits were warranted. Market response came quickly. Buyers who had postponed decisions reconsidered. Some who had been shopping used equipment shifted their attention to new Yamaha units. Commercial operators re-ran budgets based on the lower acquisition cost. Demand increased for Yamaha dealers, but the shift created immediate strain for others. Dealers with heavy inventories of competing brands now held engines purchased at higher cost structures, making price comparisons difficult to defend. Boat builders tied to exclusive engine agreements faced similar challenges when presenting full rig packages to customers, now comparing them directly against Yamaha's revised lineup. The implications extended beyond short-term sales. Permanent price reductions alter market expectations. Once buyers perceive a new baseline, competing manufacturers must decide whether to follow, hold, or attempt to differentiate on non-price factors. In this case, Yamaha's move placed considerable pressure on Mercury, Suzuki, and emerging low-cost brands. From premium comfort to real pressure. For much of the last 40 years, Yamaha occupied a comfortable and carefully earned niche. Their outboards rarely chased the highest horsepower number or the flashiest technology. Instead, they leaned on a blend of conservative engineering and relentless quality control that became part of their brand story. You could argue in the showroom about whether a Mercury or a Suzuki might be faster or lighter. But when the conversation turned to which motor was least likely to leave you drifting in the wrong current, Yamaha's name rose to the top almost by default. Marine mechanics reinforced that image without needing a marketing script. At boat ramps and service yards, you would hear quiet versions of the same advice. If you want to see me less often, buy the gray one. Stories circulated of Yamaha four-strokes logging thousands of hours with basic care. Of commercial skippers running F150th or F250th in harsh conditions with minimal drama. That pattern allowed Yamaha to maintain pricing that could be described politely as confident. Customers did not have to like the numbers to accept them. Peace of mind had a price, and for a long time, the market was willing to pay it. By late in the year 2024, Yamaha's share of the global outboard market hovered just under 30%, putting them behind Mercury in overall volume, but solidly ahead of most other rivals. On the surface, that did not sound like a brand under threat. Dig into the details, and the picture looked a little less calm. Mercury's introduction of new V10 outboards brought a mix of performance and pricing that cut directly across Yamaha's higher horsepower offerings. In several key categories, comparable Mercury packages came in around 15% cheaper when rigged on similar hulls. For buyers more interested in top speed and modern styling than in long-term reputation, that difference was hard to ignore. Suzuki, meanwhile, continued to refine its lean burn engines, stacking competitive fuel economy and long warranties into a package aimed squarely at value-conscious owners who might once have stretched financially to land a Yamaha. More quietly, the lower cost flank that many ignored a decade earlier started to look more serious. Chinese brands like Hidea and Parsoon moved beyond their early image as knockoffs and rough copies. Newer models emerged from cleaner factories, with better materials, more consistent machining, and a network of importers who understood Western expectations a little better each year. Their pricing often sat 40% or more below the established brands. For buyers who looked at an engine as a tool rather than a long-term relationship, that mattered. Inside Yamaha's own reports, small shifts turned into trend lines. In roughly 18 months, their market share in North America slipped from around 28% to roughly 24.5%. At the same time, dealer inventories of unsold Yamaha engines rose. By the start of the winter season, industry estimates suggested something on the order of 14,000 Yamaha outboards sitting on racks in North American showrooms and warehouses, financed at interest rates in the mid-single digits that had climbed sharply from the almost free money years not long before. In meetings with key dealers, Yamaha's North American leadership acknowledged that something had to change. Margins were getting squeezed from both above and below. Tie that to a post-health crisis slowdown in boat buying, along with rising borrowing costs, and the old mix of modest price increases and incremental incentives no longer looked like enough. At one closed-door gathering in Atlanta, the message from the stage was that corporate headquarters in Japan was preparing a fundamental shift in how Yamaha would compete over the next decade. The details were kept vague, and most people in that room assumed it meant marketing changes, adjusted dealer programs, maybe a renewed model push. Very few of them guessed the truth, because the real plan did not start in the showroom. It started on the factory floor, and it had been unfolding quietly for years. If this changes how you think about outboards, hit like so more boaters see it, and drop a comment telling us whether Yamaha's move helps you or hurts you. Your comments shape what we cover next. Factories that changed the math. While market share charts and dealer inventories were shifting, Yamaha's plants in Japan were undergoing a slower, more invisible transformation. If you walked through some of those facilities 10 years ago, you would have seen a blend of skilled workers, semi-automated systems, and traditional assembly stations. By the time the 2025 price announcement landed, that picture had changed in ways most customers would never see, but every accountant would feel. Yamaha had been pouring capital into a combination of advanced automation and what manufacturing experts call modular architecture. Artificial intelligence systems monitored production lines in real time, looking for patterns in tolerance drift, assembly defects, and tool wear. Where a human inspector once would have checked a crankshaft by eye and by gauge, vision systems now scanned thousands of points on a component in seconds, comparing them to digital models, robotic arms, applied sealant, or assembled sub-modules, with a consistency that did not vary from hour 3 to hour 12 of a shift. At the same time, engineers revisited the engines themselves. Instead of treating every model as a mostly unique machine, they pushed toward families of engines built around shared components. A mid-range 4-cylinder, a higher horsepower version, and even related VE6 designs might all use the same basic block architecture, similar cylinder heads, and common electronics modules. Clever design meant that changing displacement or output often required relatively small changes in parts, not a completely different bill of materials. The cumulative effect of these changes was not dramatic in a single week, but over years it amounted to a different cost structure. Internal reports, some of which eventually reached analysts, suggested that defect rates on certain lines had fallen by more than 80%. Time required to assemble a complete engine dropped from something like 14 labor hours to closer to 6, depending on the model. Scrap and rework declined. Parallel to that, Yamaha pursued a strategy that looks old-fashioned until a crisis hits. Instead of relying on a long chain of independent suppliers, they pulled more production in-house. By the early 2020s, they controlled something like 85% of their outboard supply chain, from cast aluminum housings and crankshafts to sophisticated control units and digital throttle modules. There are several advantages to this approach. cost is one, without middlemen adding their own margins. The combined price of materials and processing can drop significantly. Another is control. When global shipping snarls or currency swings hit companies that rely on dozens or hundreds of outside vendors, a vertically integrated manufacturer is less exposed. They can adjust production without waiting on as many outside decisions. Put those pieces together, and the internal cost of building certain engines shifted in a way that quietly moved the goalposts. People familiar with the numbers talk about mid-range 4-stroke outboards that once cost Yamaha a figure in the low to mid-teens of thousands of dollars to build, now landing closer to $11,000 all in. If that engine then sells for just under $15,000, you can still maintain respectable profit, while making longtime competitors look expensive by comparison. The key point is that this did not happen overnight. It was the product of slow, incremental improvements, the kind of continuous refinement often described by the Japanese term for constant improvement. Each individual improvement, a redesigned fixture here, a revised assembly sequence there, a slightly more efficient casting process somewhere else, does not look like a revolution. Over time, they compound into exactly that. By the time Yamaha pushed the button on the 25% price cuts, they were not stepping off a cliff. They were finally using cost advantages they had been building for almost a decade. From the outside, that kind of move looks sudden. From inside a production office, stacked with charts and performance logs, it likely felt overdue. What this means, if you're buying in 2025, Yamaha's price cuts are not a promotion. They are the new baseline. And depending on what brand you own or are planning to buy, this shift either saves you money or costs you far more than most people realize. Once that move hit the market, the reaction spilled out far beyond the factory gates. Shockwaves through dealers and boat builders. The first wave of reaction was predictable. Incoming calls increased, email inboxes filled with price quote requests, and long quiet. Showrooms suddenly had buyers walking around again, running hands along cowlings, asking about lead times, and trying to confirm that the numbers on the new price lists were real. Some dealers reported a kind of whiplash after months of telling customers they were lucky just to get engines at all. They were now explaining that, yes, the same model really did cost that much less than it had a season earlier. For dealers tied closely to Yamaha, with a strong pipeline of existing stock and good relationships with local boat builders, the announcement felt like a wind finally at their backs. Their problem shifted from convincing people that a Yamaha was worth the premium to rearranging their allocation to match the new surge of interest. That kind of problem is rare enough in a slower market that very few complained. Elsewhere, the mood was less upbeat. Dealers who had made big commitments to Mercury or Suzuki inventory, filling warehouses with engines purchased before the Yamaha move, saw the value of those engines erode in a matter of days. The motors themselves were unchanged. The fiberglass boats they were hung on would still run the same. But in a world where a comparable Yamaha suddenly cost thousands of dollars less than it did 3 weeks ago, the psychology of price shifted. One long-time dealer in the mid-Atlantic region, sitting on several $1 million worth of Mercury outboards purchased under the old assumptions, described the effect in blunt terms to a regional paper. He said that recessions had taught him to live with slow seasons, and the health crisis years had taught him to live with uncertainty of supply. This, he argued, was something else. Yamaha had not just made their own engines cheaper. They had changed what customers believed an engine in that class should cost. Every other brand became, in his words, a harder sell in one morning. Used values felt the impact as well. Engines that owners had expected to move quickly at certain price points now lingered longer on listings. Offers arrived, but they arrived lower. In some segments, particularly around mid-range 4-strokes, estimates suggest that effective resale values fell by around 20% over the next month. For owners, that could be written off as part of the market cycle. For banks holding loans secured partly against those engines, it was another risk factor to monitor. Boat builders saw that same mix of threat and opportunity. Companies that had spent decades aligning themselves with Mercury, Suzuki, or other brands faced pressure from dealers and retail buyers asking why they could not order boats with Yamaha packages instead. Some builders responded quickly, opening up previously closed engine options on certain lines. Others were constrained by existing contracts, or simply by production realities, and could only watch as their local dealers tried to sell more expensive engine packages into a newly price-sensitive environment. Service departments, often the most stable profit center within a marine dealership, watched their own forecasts shift as well. Yamaha's reductions did not stop at complete engines. Many high-turnover parts, from electronic components to commonly replaced hardware, saw lower list prices too. For Yamaha-focused dealerships, this encouraged more genuine parts turnover and reinforced brand loyalty. For shops whose parts sales were more tied to other brands, the move squeezed margins, as customers began comparing not just labor rates, but parts prices line by line. Meanwhile, online, owners and spectators debated the meaning of it all. Some argued that such deep cuts could only be a sign of trouble, speculating about unsold stock, weakening demand, or internal challenges that had not yet reached public disclosures. Others pointed to the stories coming out of the Japanese factories and the repeated hints from analysts about automation and vertical integration. In that reading, the price cuts looked less like a last throw of the dice and more like a strategic move grounded in very solid math. Both sides agreed on one thing. Yamaha had changed the reference point. The question shifted from whether this was a smart tactic to something broader. What long game did this point toward? Analysts start connecting the dots. As the immediate storm of dealer reactions and customer questions began to settle, marine industry analysts and economists started to lay Yamaha's move alongside other timelines. When they did, a pattern emerged that widened the conversation beyond simple gasoline engines. One economist, Sarah Mitchell, who had been tracking power sports and marine markets for years, drew attention to three overlapping influences that set the stage. The first was the manufacturing overhaul inside Yamaha, visible in patent filings, spending disclosures, and sporadic reports from suppliers. The second was the gradual expiration of certain key patents held by competitors, particularly around fuel system management and some aspects of digital control, which opened room for Yamaha to adopt mature ideas without licensing costs. The third, and perhaps most important in her view, was the approaching wave of electrification that had been creeping closer to the marine world. In Internal Strategy, documents that eventually reached trade publications, Yamaha described a target that sounded ambitious but clear. Before electric and hybrid outboards became mainstream, they wanted to control something approaching 40% of the conventional gasoline outboard market. The reasoning was straightforward. When the time came to ask customers to invest in early electric systems, battery packages, and new kinds of support infrastructure, the companies with the largest installed base of satisfied owners would have the easiest path to those sales. Under that logic, selling a conventional F150 or F300 today at a lower margin became a form of long-term customer acquisition. Instead of spending marketing dollars on advertising space, Yamaha would be spending margin on giving buyers a better price while still delivering reliability. In exchange, they would gather a larger pool of owners with positive brand experience by the time electric offerings matured. Industry veteran Tom Rodriguez compared the move to what Honda had done to Harley-Davidson and other American motorcycle manufacturers in the middle of the 20th century. Honda did not win by instantly making the most powerful or luxurious bikes. They won by making solid machines very efficiently and then selling them at prices that domestic rivals found difficult to match, while maintaining their own overhead. By the time those rivals worked out their response, Honda had built loyalty and volume that would take decades to erode. There is a similar risk here for Yamaha's competitors. A company that still relies heavily on a large network of independent suppliers with fragmented factories and less automation may not be able to shave its own production costs as quickly. To match Yamaha's new pricing, they might have to accept thinner margins that would unsettle investors or constrain research and development budgets. To maintain their existing margins, they would have to explain to dealers and buyers why a roughly equivalent engine should still command a noticeably higher price. Neither option is easy. That is especially true when the horizon includes not just more efficient gasoline engines, but entirely new propulsion systems. To fund electric development, software ecosystems, and marina infrastructure partnerships. Companies will need capital. If one company is effectively using its manufacturing edge to tax its rivals by forcing them to choose between margin and volume, that company is going to be in a stronger position when the next phase begins. The question then becomes not only how Yamaha will use its current advantage, but how fast the rest of the industry can close the gap. If they cannot do it quickly enough, the next round of change may belong even more firmly to the company that just reset the price sheet. Drop a like if you'd never trust this on your transom. Electric horizons and quiet experiments. While dealers reshuffle pricing sheets and competitors try to hold the line, another part of Yamaha's strategy has been unfolding in quieter corners of the water. Around certain Japanese testing grounds and a handful of European marinas, small boats with familiar Yamaha silhouettes have been spotted running nearly silent, barely awake, and no exhaust in the air. The cowlings carry no new branding, but what's missing is more telling than what's visible. Officially, Yamaha has said little beyond standard language. Pilot programs, research platforms, the usual balance of range, weight, and cost. But the pattern is familiar. Prototype units are clearly active, logging time, collecting the kind of field data no laboratory can replicate. Engineers are watching how these systems perform under real-world conditions, how batteries hold up across duty cycles, how software manages torque, and how owners use power when no one is measuring. At the same time, Yamaha's existing gasoline engines are getting smarter. Many already include networked control systems that send performance data back through dealer channels. That data helps diagnose faults, monitor wear, and even anticipate failures before they happen. It's a foundation that can scale, and Yamaha knows it. The real shift comes when those same systems move from gasoline to electric. Battery packs, charge cycles, power management all depend on data. A company already collecting performance insights from thousands of engines is better positioned to manage electric reliability without the guesswork, and more importantly, to do it in a way that feels invisible to the owner. But the bottleneck isn't technology, it's infrastructure. Most marinas weren't built with fast charging in mind. Adding a few shore power hookups for ERV-style liveaboards is already a challenge in some harbors. Redesigning entire docks for high-capacity marine charging will take time, money, and standards that don't exist yet. This is where Yamaha's current volume strategy connects directly to the future. A marina might hesitate to invest for 10 uncertain customers. But if one manufacturer shows up with 10,000 of them, ready, equipped, and loyal, that conversation changes. Other brands are taking different routes. Mercury is leaning into cost-optimized gasoline builds. Suzuki is forming hybrid partnerships with major automakers. Chinese builders, for now, seem to be refocusing on domestic markets. But only one company has clearly tied today's pricing to a long-term bid for control. Yamaha's electric future is still quiet. But it's not theoretical. The test units are real. The infrastructure questions are real. And the silence probably won't last much longer. Would you run one of these systems 5 years from now, or are you staying with fuel? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd never bet against the gray motor, hit like, subscribe if you want to see how this plays out, because Yamaha's next move might redefine more than price tags.